Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast.
To the show, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to interview you. You have been a busy woman in the arts, curating, creating all around the world. But I want to go back to the beginning and talk about where you're from and where you're located today.
Absolutely. I mean, back to the beginning, it's kind of an interesting time in my life right now because I've come full circle in a way. I was actually born in Paris. My father is French, my mother's American. But I left when I was really young and grew up in the south of France in Toulouse, which is where I would call home, or the general region of Occitanie, which is a beautiful part of the world. And since turning 18, I have gone to college in the United States. I've lived in Amsterdam. I've also studied in Scotland and in London, and then sort of by a mixture of different accidents and geopolitical factors, if you count Brexit and all that, I've ended up back in Paris kind of accidentally. And it really feels full circle because one of the things I do is teach classes, and one of those classes is on the same street as the house I was a little kid in. So it's a weird full circle moment at the moment.
That is very full circle. That's pretty wild. We always say we come home, right?
Yeah, well, temporarily at least. I think this is another one of my chapters. I don't know if I'll stay permanently in Paris, but it's been a longer chapter than expected, and it seems to just keep going. So,
and have your parents always been supportive of your artistic endeavors? Were they into that, or were they like, be a doctor, get a real job?
No, I've been really lucky actually in that. I think there were definitely times when they might have been a little bit worried. And, there's been some advice, and there was a lot of questioning of, but what are you going to do to support yourself while you pursue this? Not necessarily just from them, just in general. But they never questioned me wanting to be an artist. It was more of okay, but how is this going to actually work situation?
Yeah.
So,
and you're very lucky too to grow up in a bilingual household. I mean, you're fluent in French and English so easily that way.
Yes, I have to give a quick shout out to my mom for being extremely rigorous about the English. I would not speak English the way I do today if it weren't for her. She would really insist. I have a little brother, and we both had to always respond in English if we were spoken to in English. So for a little period when I was about 2 or 3, I thought all women spoke English and all men spoke French.
That's so funny. We have to give a shout out to Mom. Thanks, Mom, for forcing the English on us. We appreciate you. And now you primarily work as a screen printer. Tell us more about that.
So I currently don't actually do screen printing. I have about 10 years of experience, one might even say expertise at this point, in screen printing in a lot of different ways. I made one screen print when I was a sophomore in college, and I just never stopped. The only problem with screen printing is it requires a very fully and expensively equipped workshop, and I haven't figured that out in Paris yet. So screen printing's been my first love as far as art goes, and it's been a constant in my practice till I got to Paris. I can still find my screen printing style in my digital work because I found that the layering that's required from screen printing is also present in a lot of digital artwork, and so visually, what I now do digitally resembles in a lot of ways what I was doing with screen printing But I do hope to get myself back into the workshop and get my hands full of ink again soon.
Yeah, coming by a studio space in Paris can be quite difficult, especially when you need big equipment for screen printing. But I'm sure you'll find your way. But you studied drawing, printmaking, digital art, among other things. Why did screen printing become your favorite out of those things?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Why does someone fall in love with anything, really? There's just something that clicks, and then you just keep doing it. And the next thing you know, you've been doing it for a decade and you're still not bored of it. I I think there's just so many, ironically, layers to screen printing because it's literally something you have to do by different color layers. So I think it forces you to look at things differently because you have to separate the different colors and then bring them back together to create an image. And so it makes you look at what you're going to create in a very different way than if you're drawing through lines. You actually draw through shape. And it kind of led me down a path of really, I work with a lot of black and white, and I think that comes from screen printing because I've become very interested in the way light affects shape. And so really what we respond to, for instance, if you look at a black and white photo, what you're seeing is the shadow interacting with the light, and that's what's creating a shape without the use of color. And screen printing has really shifted my way of looking at shape and light, I think, in that way.
Yeah, I can completely see how, it's basically you're taking something apart and putting it back together.
Yeah, exactly.
And what inspires your work? Where do you come up with your ideas for what you're going to create, and what's that process like?
I have to preface this with, I think inspiration can come from so many places, and it can be very surprising where inspiration comes from. Um, I'd say there's sort of three elements for me at the moment in how I come about my inspiration. One is people. The people you surround yourself with are going to make such an impact on what your work looks like, both aesthetically and conceptually, because conversations with new and different people that know you more or less, are so transformational in that you can start with a vague question or an idea, and just the way you'll talk about it with someone, whether it's something they say to you or the way that you phrase something to them, will suddenly spark an interest in this different perspective you've just gained from that conversation. So talking to the different people I surround myself with will lead to a lot of development in my practice. A major source of inspiration for me as well is history. In my undergrad and for parts of my postgrad education, I studied history academically, and I'm not so keen on the objectivity of history. I think one of the beautiful things about being an artist is I get to be purely subjective and emotional about everything that I do. And so the artistic mix of emotion and opinion that I can put onto all the incredible things you find in history. History is stranger than anything I could come up with a lot of the times, is really what I think. And it's so full of people that are just awe-inspiring. And I do a lot of portraiture. So finding these beautiful and incredible histories and then bringing them to light, often stories that are forgotten or have been pushed aside, is just, it feels fascinating and it feels important a lot of the times as well. So that's another element. And then the final one I'll touch quickly on is the curating that I've been doing, which kind of brings back to conversation because that's how I see curating. So the third element that I draw a lot of inspiration from, circling back to communication with people, is curating, which I see as bringing artists and artwork into conversation with each other. And sometimes that conversation can originate with something I want to talk about, and sometimes that comes from meeting an artist that I want to work with and hearing what they have to say, and then that will spark some idea from me, and then some new project will be born from the conversation I want to have with that artist. And that's really led to some very unexpected artworks in the last couple of years. So that's something I'm really lucky to get to do as well.
So a lot of times it's about making connections with other artists and seeing how you can collaborate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Working with other artists is one of the most amazing things you can do creatively, because artists, we speak through words because we have to in our daily life, but we've chosen art because there's a whole different way to communicate visually. And it's fascinating to be around other people that have those ways of communication and that know how to combine image and word into a different type of conversation, really. And just artists are so incredible to surround yourself with, whether you're an artist or not, really. It'll just change the way you look at things around you. And also, it's great to dispel that myth of, the artist locked up in their studio. Of course, sometimes you need to do that to make, but none of the greats worked alone. I mean, Hemingway was friends with Scott Fitzgerald, Picasso with, all of those guys from the, Matisse and all the other tortured, artists in their 20s that were in the 1920s that were in Paris. They all hung out and got drunk with each other and made jokes and did things together. And then they'd go off in their studios and they'd make things. And then we're surprised that sometimes they look, similar. It's because they were inspiring each other. And that's still how artists work today.
Yeah, I mean, some people say like you have to create in a vacuum, but it sounds like you disagree with that.
Wholeheartedly. Yeah, no, I think you get the odd sort of self-made genius that's kind of come out of a bubble. And I'm sure that there are some examples in history of those people. But even those people didn't live as hermits. Maybe they didn't get their inspiration from other artists, but they certainly got it from other people. So I really don't believe that loneliness can kill creativity, not cure it. Actually, quite the opposite.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's this energy that's like an exchange between artists, exchange between people, and you need to get together to make that happen.
Absolutely.
And
it's
you've
really
curated
important.
and exhibited work all over the world, the United States, the Netherlands, Scotland, England, and France. Talk a little bit about what it's like to work as a curator. What is that process? What does it even mean? I think some people don't even understand what it means.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know what it means because it's a fascinating job, but when done right, it's kind of invisible. So the curator, and this is my approach to curating. I don't know that other curators would necessarily define it this way because I have come into curating as an artist. So the curation element of my work is very much self-taught and picked up along the way from my own experiences with exhibiting and meeting other curators. But it comes back to that word conversation. I really think that curating is creating the conversation that's going to happen between the artists and their artwork within a space. And then also preparing that conversation for the audience to come and interact with that dialogue that's already happening between the works. And so there's a lot of very boring technical aspects to it, which are just, writing press releases and picking the artists and putting together, the information that the audience is going to get, which is their bios and their artist statements, and making all of that, making labels and all that. And then there's the creative side of it, which is being in the space and deciding where the artwork's going to go and what artwork is going to interact with other artworks to create something new. So you kind of, as a curator, get to add a new layer to ideas that are already present in the work by placing them together, whether it's in contrast or in a sort of symbiotic relationship. And then you get to elevate all of that with simple things like lighting. A well-lit show is such a shift from, artwork that's not placed well enough in the view of the audience. Or one thing that really drives me crazy that you see a lot is an overhung show. I really think artists, the artwork needs space to breathe, and the audience needs to be able to view it. If you walk into a room and there's a dozen artists exhibited on the same tiny wall, you're probably only going to remember one or two of them. You're not going to look at all of them, even though they may all be absolutely incredible. So it's a lot of little teeny things that create this dialogue between the artists and the ability for each of the artists to shine without necessarily outshining the others, if that
Yeah,
makes
completely.
sense.
And I think you explained that really well, because I think a lot of people just think, oh, curator, they choose, what art to put next to the other art. They don't know all these little details of lighting and, different feelings and conversations. Like it's all goes together.
Absolutely. I think one of the exciting things for me is that for my artwork, I'm mixed media, but mostly I'm very two-dimensional. I don't create sculpture. I don't create art that, with the exception of a few books I've made, they're not, they don't have, they don't occupy space in that sculptural way. Whereas curating gives me this opportunity, even if all of the artwork is two-dimensional, to work with space, because you become very conscious of how your audience is going to enter the space, how they're going to walk around the space. Are they going to go left or right? Is that going to change how they understand this conversation you've put into place? Are they, when they stand in the middle, if they turn around, what artwork is facing what? All of these different questions that you really wouldn't think of when you walk into an art show, because you're looking individually at the artwork, but they are going to affect the subconscious way that you digest the show as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's subtle and often totally becomes invisible. But I find that absolutely fascinating.
Do you find it different because you've worked in different countries on how things are exhibited or what the expectations are? Is it different by country, or is there kind of a common standard there?
I am not sure that I can accurately answer that question, because I've exhibited internationally. I've co-curated a little bit when I was in London, but mostly my curatorial experience has been in Paris. And I also, again, come at this from very much an artist perspective. So I don't honestly know the standards, which is a little bit ironic, because I do believe as an artist that you should know the rules that you're breaking if you're going to break them. But so I can admit that paradox, but I really have no formal training as a curator. It kind of didn't come about as something I wanted to do initially. I wanted to exhibit and I wanted to work with other artists, and I got a little bit tired of the applications and the open calls and the fees and all of that, and just trying to be approved by the gallery system, whether that's in Paris or elsewhere. And I thought, hey, there's a bunch of artists and we all want to exhibit and we all have these amazing things to say. And, we don't really want to wait till someone gives us that label of emerging artist. We just want to kind of do it ourselves. And I just kind of started doing it because I can't afford to rent a gallery space on my own in Paris. But if we all group together and we share the fees, we can actually put something together that looks really good. And I kind of, by doing it, realized that I loved it and that I had the skills to do it. And I just kind of continued doing it, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's how a lot of things start. It's by accident, you just say, I have a problem, here's a solution, and it kind of falls together.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes the greatest things, come from that. And you learn, for this, I've learned through trial and error, and luckily something that I already really had in my way of thinking, which I suppose kind of comes into any advice I could give to other artists or creatives in general, is that I learned a long time ago to appreciate failure, which is not to say that I've had shows that have completely failed, but elements of putting together shows have been really complicated sometimes, or felt like they've gone wrong, or that everything's fixed itself at the last minute and things like that. And all of those almost disastrous experiences have taught me to improve on that. And each show I do feels like it runs a little bit smoother and that I know what I'm doing a little bit more. And so, trial and error can feel scary, but when you kind of see it as that win-win of, well, if it goes well, great. And if it doesn't, then I'll know how to make it go well the next time. Kind of makes trying new things a little less scary.
Yeah, every time you make mistakes, it's like you grow a little braver, right? So it's like it's kind of planned. That was Coco. He's talking to you. Okay, 1 second. Okay. So recently you had a portrait of Josephine Baker exhibited in the residence of the American ambassador's private home in Paris. Very exciting. Talk about that whole process, what happened, how you got that opportunity, and about the portrait itself.
Yeah, that was a really exciting, very unexpected experience. I was at the time working on a series called Remember the Ladies, which is all about different women throughout history all over the world that have these amazing stories that have been kind of forgotten or pushed to the side or overshadowed by their male counterparts. And it was my chance to do a lot of portraits I'd wanted to do for a long time, and one of them was Josephine Baker, and it just so happened that I'd missed the announcement that she was going to be inducted into the Pantheon. So timing-wise, that was quite a coincidence. And so I made this portrait and I posted it on social media, and I think it was through Instagram, of all places, that one of the cultural attaches of the American embassy found that and wrote to me saying they were doing a gala in her honor, that some of her family was going to be there, and they wanted to do a mixture of established and emerging artists who were going to show work that they'd done about her at this gala. It kind of turns out, I think I was pretty much the only emerging artist. Everyone else was very intimidating to me. I got to meet one of my absolute idols, Christian Guémy, whose street art is everywhere in Paris under the name C215. You have definitely seen him, even if you don't know that you have. So it was this crazy, I had to drop off the portrait a couple days before, and I have this amazing photo that's probably still on my social media somewhere of the Josephine Baker portrait in one of those blue IKEA bags in one of these incredible rooms that looks like it could be in Versailles. That's like the Louis XV salon or something like that. And I felt so out of place for every minute of it, but it was kind of incredible to see the places that art can take you. That was actually one of the craziest days of my life, because earlier that day, I just started something I still work on to this day, which is I do these workshops in prison, and I actually in the same day had to go from a prison directly to the residence of the American ambassador, which was a challenge to dress for.
How do you dress for that?
Oh, I think I wore a jumpsuit and I put heels in my bag, so I hid behind the guard at the entrance of the residence of the American ambassador and changed from sneakers to heels and threw on some lipstick and hoped no one would notice that I looked a little bit frazzled.
You look like an artist.
Exactly. People don't expect too much from artists in terms of presentation. You can dress however you want. And
exactly. You're creative. We just expect you to look like that. And talk about how the night went. There was like everybody was there. You got to meet some of the family and just show off your work.
I was very starstruck for all of it. There were a few, I'm sure I talked to some people that I should have recognized but didn't. I got to meet Catel, what's her first name? I'm blanking. She's a comic book artist who does this incredible series on women as well, one of which is on Josephine Baker. And I missed my chance to meet one of my other favorites, who's Pénélope Bagieux, who was told wasn't going to be there till I saw on social media the next day that I'd actually been standing next to her at one point and didn't realize it was her. And I completely fangirled and hopefully didn't embarrass myself too much when I met Kingston School. But I got to meet some really cool artists that I admire. So that was very exciting.
Yeah, and it just shows that social media opens this doorway for us to make connections, to put our work further, because it wasn't that long ago you needed an agent, you needed to know the right people and yada yada, and now we can totally do it ourselves.
Absolutely. Although we shouldn't underestimate the challenges of doing it ourselves. I would actually love an agent because it can be exhausting, as every single creative knows, having to do, the admin, the actual creative work, the promoting of it, the social media. There's so many layers to being an artist today that leaves surprisingly little time for the actual art itself.
Yeah, you have to wear so many hats. It's like any business owner.
Yep,
absolutely. And how would you
absolutely.
define creativity in your own words?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. Creativity. Maybe this is a very basic answer, but I think creativity is just seeing the world in a way that is unique to yourself. It's letting the lens of who you are and your own experiences actually guide you into potentially non-typical ways of seeing and expressing things that you come across on a daily basis.
I think that's a great definition. I ask all my guests this question, and it's pretty different every time. So I think creativity
can imagine.
Creativity can be hard to define in a lot of ways, but usually it's, like you said, expressing yourself in your own way and connecting with others and creating something out of nothing and finding solutions.
Yeah, creating something out of nothing is definitely part of it.
And what's something you would go back and tell your younger creative self?
Oh wow, I'd have to think about that one. Oh, sorry, I'm blanking. I think if I had to go back, well, I think what I said earlier about failure, I learned pretty early on, luckily, but I think knowing that from the very beginning is something that can be useful to anyone, just knowing that failure is such a positive and to not be afraid of it. I think that's something that we could all learn younger than however young we all learn that lesson. And the other one is to really appreciate and hang on to the amazing people that you meet, because I have found that it can be tricky to sort through who you're going to work well with and who you're not, whether you get along with them or not actually becomes somewhat irrelevant, actually, once you get into, creative and professional situations. And really, there are few people in my life who I consider very good friends and who I work with absolutely seamlessly and just make everything we do together wonderful and easy and exciting. And I wish I'd known sooner how rare those people are, because some of those people I've known from very young, and I appreciate them more every day.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of us are learning that as we age, like the ones you really connect with are far and in between. So you need to really appreciate those people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And creatives, I think you said something about creatives being misunderstood. I think, you can be surrounded by people that love you and support you, but don't necessarily fully understand what you do and why you do it. And so the people that have all of that and then also are creative, whether they're in the same field as you or not, but that really not just love and appreciate, but get you and get what you're trying to do and say, and you can lay everything bare to them when you're trying to figure something out, and that speak that creative language or that visual language with you and can really untangle things that can get a bit stuck in your mind. Those people are so precious.
Yeah, we should never take them for granted. And what are you excited about for your future work? What are you working on now? What do you want people to know about?
Well, the first thing I'm really excited about, and a little nervous because it's coming up next week. Well, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but starting October 17th, I have a new exhibition that I've curated and I'm also exhibiting in. And I'm a mixture of excited and nervous because It's a topic I've wanted to create a show about for a long time. We're taking the terms refugee, immigrant, and expatriate as our core concept, and each artist brings something totally different to the table through their own experiences and through the concept they've decided to broach the topic with. But it feels both risky, controversial, but also important to put in front of an audience, and I'm very curious to see how it's all going to come together and to see how people are going to react to this show. So it'll be, it's called Itinérances. It's going to be in the Marais, Galerie Cecilia F, from the 17th of October through to the 29th of October. Open every day.
Oh, that's great. I hear that come up a lot as an expat myself, and there's all these ideas around like what is the difference between expat and immigrant, and why is some of them negative and some of them are good, and so this will be really interesting to see some art pieces around these ideas.
Exactly. I think those terms were really what brought me to the topic in the first place, because I have all of those terms in my family tree. I've had different, regardless of what crossing they've made, what what borders they've passed through, depending on the historical context and how they were perceived. I've had different people in my family, on the branches of my family tree, be called refugee and immigrant, and I've always had the title expat for me, and it's worked out to be true because I have come back to my native country, but I very well could have not, and there was no way of knowing that. So I just think it's interesting the way those labels get ascribed, and I just thought it was an important topic to talk about and to see what artists had to say about it.
Well, we'll definitely share that information in the show notes so people can check it out. And tell us where people can connect with you online, learn more about your work, and connect with you.
So I'm present. I think my most up-to-date would be my Instagram account, which is Clara Lang-Ezekiel _art. That tends to have a mixture of what's coming up, what I've made, and little daily things. I also have a website, claralangezekiel.com, that has all the finished series with the artist statement. So if you really want to do an in-depth dive into what I do and what I have to say, that's a good place to go. And it also has an online shop if you want to own anything. And you can find me on Facebook as well. I'm not very active there unless I'm promoting a show, but also Clara Lang-Ezekiel Art. And I think that's about it, really.
Wonderful. Well, we'll share all of that in the show notes so people can check it out, connect with you. If you're in Paris, come see the exhibition. And thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.